Hello everyone, this is part 19 of What If Naruto Formed a New Team, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. A foreboding breeze brushed past Tsunade's cheek as she stood atop Katsuyu's head with Naruto unconscious at her feet. Across from the giant slug queen, Jiraiya waited with Gamabunta, staring down Orochimaru and Kabuto, who had settled themselves with Manda. I hoped I'd never have to see Orochimaru's ugly face again, Jiraiya, the toad boss complained to his companion, sensing trouble was ahead. This time we finish it. Manda, in contrast to the other summon bosses, was not very inclined to aid the one who had called him, Orochimaru. How dare you bring me here with nothing to offer me? Orochimaru remained silent, staring ahead at Tsunade. Kabuto grimaced after hearing the snake's rumbling voice. This is bad. Manda would abandon Orochimaru-sama if he knew how severely weakened he has become. We must defeat the others quickly or he'll turn on us. Once I k them, bring me 100 human s, do you hear me? The giant snake decided to lend help at a price. Orochimaru gave no answer. There was no time to arrange deals with his boss summon, especially since he did not have 100 humans to feed the snake with at the moment. Manda rounded on Gamabunta a moment later, taunting him, "You filthy toad. You don't come anywhere near being a worthy enough opponent. I will crush you like the miserable frog you are." "It's lovely to see you too, Manda," Gamabunta retorted. "I've been meaning to make myself a new snakeskin purse, now that I think about it." Manda was seething at the words, but held still, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. Nearby, Tsunade was murmuring orders to the giant slug that had come to help her. "Katsuyu, take Naruto somewhere safe." "Of course, Tsunade-sama." The slug obediently divided a smaller copy from her body that gently lifted Naruto and slithered down from Katsuyu's head. The slug clone joined Shizune on the ground, who was mobile again after healing her legs, and went to find cover. Not long after Katsuyu attacked, Zeshi Nensen. A jet of acidic liquid had been aimed for Manda, but the snake boss avoided the assault, countering by wrapping his massive body around the slow-moving slug. Once his victim was thoroughly trapped in his coils, Manda opened his jaws wide, prepared to chomp Tsunade along with her summon. Gamabunta moved quickly, drawing his blade and S at Manda's gaping mouth as he crunched down on the metal. Tsunade leapt from Katsuyu's head as the boss broke herself down into smaller slugs, escaping Manda's grip and slithered away to reform herself again. Manda thrashed his massive head, knocking Gamabunta away, and sent the toad's dagger flying through the air. The blade landed directly in front of Katsuyu, missing her by a few feet. The slug was glad that the blade had missed but did not let her guard down. "Gamabunta, the oil!" Jiraiya cried, forming hand seals, and his partnering toad quickly spat a mouthful of toad oil that Jiraiya ignited with a powerful fire jutsu, Gamayu Enden. The intense flames enveloped Manda, incinerating the giant snake with ease. Jiraiya relaxed momentarily after seeing that their jutsu had been a success, but was on edge again to see that the opposing snake had shed its skin and disappeared. Tsunade left Katsuyu again, making a leap for the huge dagger that Manda had discarded. Manda reappeared from underground, opening his fearsome mouth wide again, poised to finish Katsuyu. Tsunade plummeted through the air after a mighty leap, bringing Gamabunta's dagger down and Manda's mouth shut before he could harm Katsuyu. Furious, the giant snake began to writhe in pain, hissing in indignation, "Wench! I'll kill you." While he struggled, it became increasingly more apparent to Orochimaru that his defeat was nearing. With Kabuto unable to fight, Manda trapped and his own arms unable to function, he was disgusted to admit he was at a great disadvantage. Jiraiya watched in awe as Tsunade leapt down from the dagger, taking Orochimaru head-on. Her punches connected with the vile snake Sannin in an endless volley, and Orochimaru was completely unable to defend himself. Tsunade's pent-up fury was released bit by bit with every attack, yet her strength waned. Still, with barely any chakra left, she refused to stop hitting Orochimaru until she was sure he was finished. "What is this feeling?" she wondered, amazed that she had fought so hard. "Even though I shouldn't be able to keep fighting, it feels like I can go on forever if I have to. I won't give in." Then she remembered Naruto and his selfless bravery, and his determination to be Hokage and protect the ones he loved. I understand now, Naruto, you were right all along. Ha! One final punch sent Orochimaru careening to the ground, and Tsunade stood on trembling legs, seeing that her opponent was then very still and not getting up. Did Tsunade really KO him? Is this over at last? Jiraiya pondered, still dumbfounded that she had nearly single-handedly defeated their old teammate. Manda, upon seeing Orochimaru's defeat, decided it was pointless to stay and left the battlefield in a cloud of smoke. Never summon me again, you fool. If you do, I will be the one to KO you. Katsuyu also departed upon seeing the fighting was over. Jiraiya left Gamabunta and moved to Tsunade's side, shocked to see Orochimaru weakly struggling to his feet as Kabuto supported his weight. The Snake Sannin glared at his former teammates, spitting angrily, even if you aren't willing to heal me, Tsunadeheim, there are other ways to have my arms mended. He and Kabuto left abruptly, their spirits soured by their horrid defeat. Off to lick his wounds, the coward. Gamabunta scoffed before he too departed. The Toad boss would have liked to have K the Snake Sannin, but his humiliating defeat was prize enough at the time. Tsunade and Jiraiya said nothing to each other as they joined up with Shizune, who stood watchfully beside Naruto. He was still unconscious. Shizune's eyes fell upon Tsunade and they widened in alarm. Oh, Tsunade-sama. Are you alright? As the Yin Seal chakra wore off, Tsunade had no energy left to fuel her youthful beauty genjutsu, and her true age was revealed. It pained Jiraiya to see her elderly form so decrepit and frail looking, and in his heart he wished there was more he could do for her. Tsunade. Don't fuss over me, please, the blonde woman responded tiredly. After I rest and regain my strength, I'll look young again in no time, but for now let's take care of the boy. The following day Naruto was again in prime health, bouncing off the walls with energy and insisting they celebrate their victory over Orochimaru. Tsunade, also her lovely, youthful self, agreed with his proposition. They had lunch at the pub Tsunade had been visiting ritually earlier in the week, and all indulged because the food would all be put on Jiraiya's tab, though he had not been informed of it. Naruto looked up from his steaming bowl of pork ramen, scrutinizing Tsunade's cheerful face. You know, I've been thinking, Bar-chan. Oh, that's good to hear. She smirked at him, going back to her meal. No, seriously. He barked and continued, I'm starting to wonder if you're really the right person for the job of being Hokage. I still say I can wipe the floor with you if it came down to it, and that'd mean that I. Alright, you bratty runt. Step outside and we'll see who's really fit to be the goddamn Hokage. Their rematch was about due anyway, so Naruto slipped away from the table, cracking his knuckles while he followed her outside. Shizune looked troubled. Do you think we should do something, Jiraiya-sama? They were just starting to get along. The perverted sage shrugged. It's better if they sort it out themselves. Besides, Naruto may have a point. If he can defeat Tsunade, then maybe he is fit to be the fifth if the occasion so calls for it. Shizune stared at him for a long moment, frazzled. Tun-Tun fidgeted uncomfortably in her lap. He grinned at her jokingly. Ha. Just kidding. I'd eat the sand kid's gourd before that ever happened. A moment later they too left the table. Jiraiya grumbled as he paid for their suspiciously expensive lunch and went outside to see what the damage was. The impending fight had not yet started and Jiraiya and Shizune settled on the side of the road. Dozens of people shopping walked down the street leisurely, oblivious to the fact that two very stubborn blonde ninja could make their afternoon grocery shopping quite hazardous at any moment. Alright, I know what to expect this time. I can take her for sure. Naruto took an offensive stance he had seen Gaara favoring recently, and put on his most determined expression. Something in the back of his mind warned him to not get too confident. He hadn't expected her to rush forward with no warning like she had, swiping at his head and knocking his headband high into the air with a blow that just barely missed his nose. Naruto involuntarily flinched when he saw Tsunade's fist come flying back down for a second blow, and he waited for a super-powered punch to send him flying into the next week. It never came. Instead he felt something warm and far from painful make contact with his bare forehead. Just what's? Naruto blinked his eyes open, surprised Tsunade had given him an affectionate K instead of knocking his lights out. Grow and become a good man, Naruto, she said softly so that only he could hear. Grow and become a great Hokage. Instantly his spirits were raised and Naruto was comfortable enough to put all of his trust in Tsunade to protect his village. He grinned up at her brightly. You got it, Bar-chan. From a short distance away there was a yelp of pain, and they turned to see Naruto's discarded Hitai-8 plummeting from the sky and landing squarely on the crown of Jiraiya's head at several miles per hour. Disgruntled, the Toad Sennin took the headband and tossed it to his student while rubbing his head. Okay, let's not do that again please. They laughed at him. Jiraiya joined in their mirth after recovering, and together they began their journey back to Konoha. Shino leaned against a tree while waiting for his team at their training grounds. His hands were hidden in his pockets and a butterfly had settled on his shoulder, murmuring to him the best locations to find sweet nectar. Although the news held little value to him, he thanked the helpful insect and sent some of his Kikaichu insects to the specified field for a well-deserved snack. Now and then his comrades deserved to be spoiled for all of their effort. Standing in the center of the training area nearby was Kurenai, the second one to arrive. After a quick glance around, she noted that two of her students had yet to make their appearance, so she decided to make small talk. You seem tense, Shino. What's on your mind? Neither Sato or Hinata have been themselves lately. They are uncomfortable sharing their hardships with me, Shino explained, knowing that Kurenai must have also been aware of their change in behavior. I have no idea what I can do. As you can imagine, Sato has been concerned for his uncle recently after our encounter with Uchiha Itachi. Hinata, on the other hand, well, Kurenai sighed resignedly, her cousin has replaced her as the heir of the Hyuga clan. I had been fearing this for a while. There's no telling how this will affect her emotionally. What can we do, then? I feel there isn't much we can do, Shino. Once they are ready to voice their worries to us, we must be ready to listen. She concluded, and he nodded in agreement. Kurenai smiled to herself. She was glad that Shino had grown fond of his teammates, however quirky they were. She believed that in the long run, Shino, though reserved and sometimes harsh, would be a loyal, steady friend to those he cared for, and a close friend was exactly what Sato and Hinata both needed at the time. 5 minutes later Hinata arrived. Kurenai was pleased to see she was less shy and had stopped wearing her jacket during the warm weather. That, and she also found the pink t-shirt she was wearing very endearing, though the Hyuga girl did seem peculiarly excited over something. Sato showed up a few moments later, beaming at his team. Yo. Guys, I say we finish our mission quick today because Sunshine and I have the biggest scoop. His sensei raised an eyebrow at him. And what may that be? That Naruto's back, Sato answered, adding, and he brought the new Hokage with him. Later on that day, Tsunde's inauguration as the fifth Hokage went surprisingly smooth. With much integrity she introduced herself to the notable Junin and Chunin who worked around the office, familiarizing herself with their roles if she didn't already know them. She had to ask Shizune to bring her some sake several times before the woman did so, and was then waiting in her office for her assistant to return, reading over scrolls outlining the abilities of that year's rookie genin. After 2 brisk knocks on the door, Tsunade looked up from the stats on Hyuga Neji, seeing Shizune had returned wearing a weary expression. Well, it's about time. Shizune nodded. Yes, Tsunade-sama, and also there are some boys here to see you. She supplied that last bit of information with a dry, warning tone, and Tsunade grudgingly hid the 2 bottles of sake in her desk drawer before shouting, come in. Naruto entered very loudly. Hey, Bar-chan, how's it going? He had not come alone. Shizune left the room after greeting Naruto and his team, smiling, and Tun-Tun trotted along beside her, hoping to get a snack at the next destination. I'm fine, Naruto. She rested her chin on her hand, smirking at the newcomers, and these must be the other knuckleheads Jiraiya's training, eh? Haku smiled, liking how she phrased it. We are, and it's wonderful to meet you at last, Tsunade-sama. Tsunade turned to Naruto. Oh. I like him. Why can't you be as charming as your friend, Naruto? I can when I feel like it. The blonde boy grumbled, folding his arms moodily. Anyway, this is Haku. He gestured to the tall dark-haired boy beside him, and this is Gaara. Gaara bowed his head respectfully to the godime, and she was pleased to see that the other members of Naruto's cell were a far less hyper than he. As well as the fact that Haku was a real sweetheart and sold her immediately. Overall you're different than what I was expecting, which is a good thing. Tsunade made note of the guarded looks on their faces, finding it amusing. I think I can trust you 3 to AC rank mission today. What do you think? Sounds good to me. Naruto agreed energetically. Where's Ero-sensei? I want to get started. After setting Team 2 up on their mission, Tsunade sighed gratefully and was just about to open her desk drawer to enjoy her sake when there was another knock on her door. It never ends around here, does it? Come in. Nara Shikaku entered with his son. She had sent for them earlier on behalf of reports from Anko on the most recent Chunin exam. Shikamaru looked around the office disinterestedly, clearly unaware of why he had been brought before the Hokage. His father, on the other hand, looked very pleased. Nara Shikamaru. Shikamaru looked to the Godime curiously. Yeah, that'd be me. Tsunade continued authoritatively, after examining your assessment from the Chunin exam you were the only genin recommended to gain the next rank out of all of your peers. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow at her. I would like to congratulate you on achieving Chunin rank. Slightly surprised to find that Haku and Naruto and Tenten or someone of the like was not also in the office accepting such an honor, Shikamaru looked to his father for some direction on the matter, who only nodded to him. Well, thank you, Hokage-sama. Shikamaru responded, somewhat mechanically, wondering what was going to happen next. That over there is yours. It should be about your size. Tsunade gestured to a thick flak vest waiting on a shelf on the side of the room. You've earned it, Shikamaru. His father collected the vest for him since Shikamaru was too deep in thought to pay attention. Great. Chunin. The only reason I became a ninja was so I could do whatever I wanted, and now I've got to K up to the Godime like she's doing a favor for putting me to work. What a drag. Shikaku handed the vest to his son, giving him a questioning look. This is what happens when women take over high-ranking positions. It can only lead to trouble. Shikamaru thought to himself, staring down at the Chunin vest in his hands, wondering how he'd explain it to his team. Well, if that's all, beat it already. Tsunade snapped, startling the Nara men. I've got work to do. After that they promptly left and she hurriedly retrieved a bottle of sake from her desk, glad to finally have time to herself at last. After being released from the hospital, Sasuke was even more insistent that Sakura train with him. Sometimes Kiba would join them, but Sasuke seemed to favor the pink-haired girl's company over his own, so the Inuzuka would often retire early to be out of their way. They had been working with Fuma Shuriken that day, and they had stopped to take a break after Sakura had nearly taken the Uchiha's head off with an overly enthusiastic throw. She had told him she was sorry several times in rapid succession, and he told her it was nothing. I'm glad he's doing better, but Sasuke isn't the same since he got into that fight with Itachi, Sakura thought to herself, settling beside him on a log. He could sense her anxiety as she passed a water bottle to him, which he quietly accepted. Though her hair was considerably shorter now, Sakura had tied it up in a miniature ponytail after it began sticking with sweat. It gave Sasuke a good view of her slender neck, which his eyes scanned over from time to time. Maybe that's enough training for today, Sasuke-kun, Sakura suggested after a long silence. You've been working non-stop since you were discharged. I think you should take it easy for a while. Besides, you've gotten a lot stronger. You don't have to. I'm not strong enough, Sasuke interrupted, bitterness dripping into his tone. It wasn't enough. I won't be able to K Itachi until I surpass my limits, I know that now. Right, I know. I promise I'll help. But, the pink-haired girl watched him stand, keeping his back to her. Sasuke, I really don't think revenge can ever make you happy. Revenge isn't supposed to make me happy, Sakura, but it's the only thing that can bring peace to my mind. It's something I've gone without for a while. He made his point quite clearly, but she was no less worried. Sakura's hands fisted in her lap, but there are other ways. I just want you to be happy. Thank you, Sakura. The Uchiha prodigy turned to look at her. I think happiness can wait for me. She nodded, swallowing her worry. Okay. Well then, how about we get some lunch now with Kiba-kun? We've kind of been neglecting him lately and I feel bad about it. Sasuke turned the offer down. Maybe I'll see you later. Right now I want to think. Deciding it was better not to pry, Sakura told him that it was fine and that she'd meet up with him in the evening if he wanted. She stood and left, unable to ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach. 3 days later. I can't believe that Lazy S got promoted and we didn't. Naruto howled, then aiming a fearsome kick for Haku's head while they were locked in a fierce spar. You'd think the old lady, would at least recognize us for our abilities by now. The dark-haired boy blocked successfully, putting some distance between himself and his aggravated teammate, but it isn't simply our abilities that are taken into account, Naruto-kun. It is our proficiency with decision-making and leadership that count as well. We have the mindsets of Chunin. Gaara insisted from his spot near a target, at which he had been ruthlessly assailing with shuriken, we are capable of the responsibility of such a rank. Naruto is right, we are being held back. A small frown formed on Haku's face as he took in the words, understanding their frustrations. Eventually Naruto calmed down and stopped attacking Haku, noting that he had more to say on the matter. It's true, we are ready. But think, aren't we most prone to provocation out of all the other genin? We overreact and sometimes deviate from the objective, to the point where it can endanger ourselves and others. Haku admitted to his friends quietly, his eyes lowered, you two most especially. Tsunade-sama and Jiraiya-sensei must see this in us after all we've been through. The blonde boy folded his arms, tilting his nose up in the air, so we're a bit nuts, yeah. Then how come Shikamaru of all people, who nearly got his head chopped off, by the way, gets to be a Chunin, huh? Gaara's stare met with Haku's thoughtful gaze before moving along to Naruto's fiery, defiant eyes. He felt he agreed more with Naruto and yet Haku had a point as well. No matter who was more right on the situation, it didn't very much affect his desire to gain a higher rank as a shinobi. Well, I suppose Shikamaru was recognized because, Haku started chuckling, it's simply because he uses his head and remains objective about things, even if he is a poor fighter. That's the trait of a leader. It's what they were looking for. That doesn't necessarily mean he deserves to be a Chunin. Gaara added, his voice reaching a growl-like tone, he, like the rest of us, still needs improvement. That's just it, isn't it? Haku asked, looking up at the clouds in the sky as the Nara would have, his talents are few, but he can analyze and use other people's abilities to his advantage and organize a strategy quickly, with us it isn't quite like that yet. What do you mean, Haku-kun? Naruto was confused and squinted his eyes to emphasize his question. The dark-haired boy looked back to his friends, we still view each other as equals. There's still too much of a balance between us. Until we can recognize a real leader among the three of us, for example, we will always be disorganized and throw off the flow that a team led by a Chunin would have. Are we ready to start taking orders from each other yet? Gaara and Naruto remained dutifully silent and Haku sighed, stubbornness like this keeps us from leading each other. We depend on each other and work as a team, but we have no natural direction. Shikamaru could lead a group better than any of us. A smirk appeared on Naruto's face, well hey. Then it's you then, isn't it? You came up with this whole lecture so it's all in your head. You can lead us, we trust you. Right, Gaara-kun. Gaara frowned, my opinion differs, but it isn't as if I would disobey him. Haku's eyes widened nervously, this isn't an election, you know. He raised his hands up in defense, I was just explaining Shikamaru's position to you. Why me? I thought it'd be better if we just trained for another year so we could then see how our growth has affected us. But you could do it, give us directions and stuff. Naruto persisted, grinning by then, even if you don't have a biju like me and Gaara-kun, you have strength that comes from your head and it's valuable. Grudgingly, the red-haired boy nodded, moving to stand by Naruto, it could work if you keep your emotions in check. Haku stared at them blankly, not expecting them to so suddenly have a revelation about their team dynamic. In his own mind he was terrified. He didn't see in himself the things Naruto had been describing, and he was afraid that if he did become responsible for his team that one slip-up could lead to tragedy. Naruto then added with precise timing, right. So now that we've picked someone can we be Chunin now? Gaara frowned at him, I don't think it works that way, Naruto. Haku shook his head in a mix of amusement and exasperation. Even if Naruto had confidence in him, he still didn't fully understand the meaning of what he had been trying to explain. He decided that it would be better to just wait and see. Naruto may grow out of his explosively righteous attitude and become wiser. Gaara could possibly let go of his anger and preconceived notions of others and keep an open mind, and as an afterthought, and maybe I can learn to be a better person in general and stop viewing life as a book. I can't just read it, I have to live it. All in good time, he hoped. Well, good for Shikamaru, then, Naruto grumbled, then looked to Gaara, hey, what about your brother and sister? They did pretty good, so maybe when they go home they can. I don't know, maybe, Gaara answered honestly, Tsunade-sama has ended the quarantine keeping foreign shinobi here, but they said they aren't ready to leave yet. Haku could understand that. Now that Temari and Kankuro had been reunited with their younger brother, they weren't very inclined to just up and leave him when they'd be uncertain of when they'd see him again, if ever. I think maybe it'd be good for you to visit sooner for a few days then, Naruto suggested quietly, just to make it easier for them to say goodbye. Gaara folded his arms, predicting the situation. If I did that, then they'd try to convince me to stay, so I won't allow them such an opportunity. Their skins are thick enough to allow them a journey home without bursting into tears on my account. Naruto laughed and then the redhead painfully on the back. Or, you big softy. You don't want to go just because you'd miss us, right? He. Gaara's nostrils flared in annoyance. Don't count on it. Night had fallen and Sasuke sulked in a forested area, unwilling to return home while his mind was still full of turbulent thoughts. Revenge. Sakura and Kakashi have to make such a fuss of it, but how could they really understand? Everyone was taken from me. I can't just accept their lives were taken from them and not do anything to revenge them. He sat very still on a high tree branch of an oak, his eyes lit with memories of his past. It wasn't within his power to so easily forgive or forget. There had been times earlier in his life in which he had considered foregoing his revenge on Itachi completely. Once he had even felt that starting his clan anew would be so much more fulfilling and that forgetting Itachi and leaving him to rot in his own hatred would be enough. But he knew he couldn't live that way with a new family of his own, always looking over his shoulder for his older brother, being afraid that he would one day return and destroy what he worked so hard for. It wasn't worth the risk. His first priority was Itachi. There was no other way he'd be able to live in peace. Happiness can wait. A rustle of leaves signaled incoming ninja and Sasuke raised his eyes, watching as 3 shinobi landed on branches surrounding him. Their headbands were of sound, so he didn't have to guess on who was responsible for sending them. Who are you guys? He questioned, putting up his guard. The ninja in front of him had 6 arms, not something one could overlook easily. Kidomaru of the Eastern Gate. Next to Kidomaru, a pale ninja spoke, Saken of the Western Gate. The remaining ninja was a girl with a very irritable expression, Tayuya of the Northern Gate. The 3 Oto shinobi leapt in unison after that, racing around Sasuke with remarkable speed. Kidomaru aimed a roundhouse kick for the Uchiha and was surprised when Sasuke countered, leaping over his back and then hurled him into Saken behind him, crushing him against the trunk of the tree. They crashed into each other and Tayuya being knocked away in a similar fashion. Sasuke paused, waiting for the dust to clear, and saw they had substituted themselves. Across from the oak, the 3 sound ninjas stood observing him from a balcony. Sasuke glanced over at them with narrowed eyes. I'm in a bad mood right now. He warned, I'm not holding back if you want to fight. Don't talk big, weakling. Saken smirked at him. I'll play the do re mi fa sol la ti do for you and break your ribs. Sasuke leapt from the tree without hesitation and Saken met him with a flying kick. The Uchiha prodigy avoided the attack and drew out a wire, tangling Saken's leg, and then slipped the string between the floorboards of the overhang. Saken hit the boards with a thud, unable to move while ensnared. He blocked Sasuke's kick and the following punches, deciding it would be prudent to fight back. Let's hear some good sounds. Before Sasuke could land his final hit, Saken knocked him back with a blast of sound. Do. The Uchiha stumbled, stunned by the attack. What? Saken sent him flying through the air with another blast of sound, sending him back against the oak with a painful crash. While Sasuke fidgeted against the trunk of the tree, Saken droned on in boredom. Your bones have a low tone, let's hear a higher pitched sound. How about it? Sasuke ignored him, noticing Kidomaru's surprise attack, and leapt away to avoid it. The spider-like ninja spat a mouthful of webs at him that latched onto his arms and swung him over to Tayuya, who kicked him back in the direction of Saken, who stood in wait. Next will be the mi fa so combination. Saken left an opening while he attacked Sasuke, and the young Uchiha countered, kicking him into the air. Saken was confounded as Sasuke proceeded with a round of vicious hits, sending him back downwards, as he recalled his match with Lee Renden. He sent his foe crashing down to the balcony and Sasuke backed away, trying to catch his breath. He hadn't expected Saken to be able to stand after such an attack, but the Sound Nin stood up with hardly a scratch on him, much to the Uchiha's astonishment. A fierce punch toppled Sasuke over and Saken lifted the shorter boy by his ankle into the air, watching him in amusement, Why would Orochimaru-sama want a punk like this? Kimimaro would have been a better choice. Sasuke looked at Saken and tried to focus, his head spinning from being upside down. As long as you stay in this village you'll be no stronger than anyone else. Saken went on, smirking, you can't improve in a place like this. Tayuya landed nearby on the balcony, come with us. That way, Orochimaru-sama will give you powers. Sasuke felt a s of pain hit his curse mark and he flinched, trying to ignore her as she continued, it's pointless for us to force a person like you to come. We were told you must decide for yourself. Kidomaru waited from his perch in the oak, Orochimaru-sama sure gave us a troublesome job. So Sasuke, what do you say? Sasuke remained silent. Are you coming or not? Saken barked impatiently, tossing Sasuke into a wall, he's so hesitant. I feel like him right here. Sasuke glared up at the three Oto nin, try it. As he called upon the power of the cursed seal, black markings began to slither down his neck and arms. He abruptly launched himself at Saken, not caring if his assault was reckless. Saken knocked him back with little effort and it was then Sasuke could see that he too had a cursed mark appearing over his skin. You're not the only one Orochimaru-sama likes, you know, he chuckled, you shouldn't be using the cursed seal so carelessly. It seems you lack control over it. Sasuke stared at the sound ninja, acknowledging the fact that he was at a great disadvantage. If you stay in the released state for too long the seal will eventually consume your entire body, Saken explained, it appears you're still in the first stage, so the speed at which it spreads is slow. But once it completely takes over your body you will lose yourself forever. In return for gaining power through the cursed seal you will be under Orochimaru-sama's control, Tayuya added, we have no freedom. If you intend to gain something, you must first throw something away. An empty look weaved its way across Sasuke's features and Tayuya sneered down at him, what is your purpose? Is it to stay in this joyful village and lick each other's wounds? And then forget all about Uchiha Itachi? Sasuke's eyes grew wide at the mentioning of the name. Don't forget what your purpose is. Saken concluded, his pale form glimmering in the moonlight, this village is only a shackle. You should break free from such worthless bonds. Then you can gain even greater power. Sasuke, against his better judgment, had heeded every word they had spoken. Before leaving, Saken called back to him, do not forget your purpose. The Oto nin faded into the night and Sasuke fixed his gaze on the moon, deciding to consider the invitation. Haku put his senbon away, judging that it was about time to return home for rest as Gaara and Naruto had done a bit earlier. They had trained well into the night, improving their techniques in the darkness in the hope it would help sharpen their senses. Naruto and Gaara had also been putting into action a few battle strategies Haku had come up with. They were surprised to find just how extensively Haku could wield their abilities. Though his teammates seemed content with his plans, Haku was still less confident in his skills than his friends were. Perhaps that was what was holding him back, he wondered. When I second-guess myself I waste time that we most often don't have on missions, Haku thought to himself, plucking the last few of his throwing needles from his target, I must work harder. I can't afford to hesitate anymore. This must be him, the pretty water boy Orochimaru-sama spoke of. Kidomaru chuckled from behind Haku, setting him on edge. What's his name? Haku. Haku turned about to face the three strange ninja who arrived. He remained quiet while he observed them, trying to gather as much information as he could. Their forehead protectors betrayed their village of origin and immediately he chose not to trust them. After leaving Sasuke with a word that they were certain would bait the young Uchiha, the sound ninja had moved on to find Orochimaru's second point of interest. It would be a different matter taking in Haku, though. They had been told that words were far more effective on Haku than force, but it would all be guesswork. Orochimaru-sama wants to add another unique Kekkei Genkai to his collection for studies and experimentation since a power like this is so incredibly rare. However, Saken frowned inwardly, we hardly know anything about this boy, what he wants, what he aspires to. It will be difficult to feed him sweet words when we don't know what strikes his fancy. Indeed, this task he has appointed us with will be more difficult than dealing with Sasuke. Sound Ninja should know better than to set foot in this village at a time like this, Haku warned, narrowing his eyes threateningly. I advise you leave before I make you do so. Hear us out then, before we go, Kidomaru suggested smoothly, we've only come here to talk, Haku. Orochimaru sent you. The dark-haired boy confirmed, I have no business with him. Don't waste your time on me. But you stand to gain so much by joining Orochimaru-sama, Saken offered, smirking at Haku. Sasuke-kun realized that after we spoke to him and he had no objections. Haku's eyes widened, what do you think? I think Sasuke has made some bad decisions before, this being just one more of them. The water nin replied, I don't know what you told him but I'm sure it was far from the truth. We are messengers of the truth, you stupid s. Only an ignorant fool would choose to ignore us. Tayuya was fed up with Haku's reluctance. We were told that you're so weak that you are a hindrance to your team. A waste of time, like you should seize an opportunity like this to gain power. Saken feared that Tayuya's angered outburst may have k'd their chances of baiting Haku. I was once told there's no shortcut to power worth taking. Haku's resolve was firm, I don't want anything to do with Orochimaru. I'll train with my team to get stronger, I prefer it that way. He glared at the Otonin ahead of him, now if you're through I suggest you leave immediately. After a short silence, Kidomaru grinned, there was one last order given to us before we set out, if I recall. Haku felt something in his gut advising him to flee, but he refused to make himself look like a coward in front of enemy shinobi. I'm through with running. Orochimaru-sama warned us that you may make a fuss after hearing our offer, Saken explained smugly, so in that event, we were ordered to use force if you're unwilling to cooperate. Haku reached for his senbon but was knocked backwards. Tayuya attacked suddenly with a note on her flute that made him completely disoriented. Hastily he made an ice mirror and positioned it in front of him to shield from their sound attacks. Saken smirked at the move, pretty clever. But this won't take long. Orochimaru-sama said he's no stronger than Sasuke-kun. He countered Haku's senbon with his own, distracting the dark-haired boy from the spider webs raining down over him. Kidomaru laughed from his place in a nearby tree as Haku began to struggle in the webbing, finding it impossible to see. Tayuya and Saken attacked together, landing two brutal kicks to the back of the trapped nin's head and gut. Haku toppled over helplessly and Kidomaru reeled him in like a trapped fish with his netting. So what do you propose we do about this one? Since he isn't coming willingly, he'll be a burden. It'll make it more difficult to get him to sound. Orochimaru-sama is aware of that, Saken replied dryly, that's why he's sending us assistance once we are outside the boundaries of this village. The faster we move the sooner we can deliver this brat. Tayuya smirked sinisterly, another little science experiment for Orochimaru-sama. This little bee will go nicely in that tank next to Sugetsu. Now we'll have a complete aquarium. Kidomaru found it amusing how she referred to all ninja with water Kekkei Genkai as fish. He handed the webbing off to her, since you're so enthusiastic then you won't mind carrying him first then, eh? Tayuya punched him full in the face before pulling Haku's cocoon over her shoulder. Sasuke stalked past the ninja academy soundlessly in the cool night air. It hadn't taken him very long to make his decision. After returning home he had packed what few possessions he deemed necessary and turned over the photograph of his team, unable to look at their carefree, cheerful faces. There was no point in wasting time. He left without a second thought, pulling his bag over his shoulder and not sparing a backwards glance at his home. His village, his friends, everything he had ever known he was casting away. And when Sakura came around the corner wearing a suspicious expression he noted that he may not have cast aside everything just yet. She paused, observing him for a long moment. You said that maybe you'd see me later, though, by later I didn't think it meant this late. It was the maybe part you should have been listening to. He continued walking, trying to be nonchalant. Sakura noted the backpack he had with him and added it to his curious decision to be on his own late at night. It made her feel nervous. It reminded her of earlier when she had been speculating if he may believe the answers he was seeking resided in sound. Kiba had convinced her otherwise, but now she felt doubtful. Someone who's leaving the village has to take this road first. The pink-haired girl mentioned quietly. Sasuke walked past her and she felt tears stinging at her eyes. She understood now that her instincts had been right and that maybe she could have done more to prevent what was happening. Why does it have to be this way? Why are you doing this? Sakura turned around to face him, crying openly, I thought we were dependent on each other, and yet you're still going. The only way I can get stronger is if I move past this place. It's holding me back. Sasuke answered, his hands hidden in his pockets, I walk a different path now, one that few others follow. You're hurting yourself this way. Choosing to be alone again. I won't accept that. She shook her head as tears slipped down her cheeks. I promised you that I'd never let anything bad happen to you. How can I if you leave? We were children, then. His chest felt heavy, much to his astonishment. The memory hurt because it held so much meaning, and it was a memory that wasn't about to vanish. Sakura would be the hardest thing to let go of. But promises never age, and Sakura felt her voice catch in her throat and the words she wanted to say on her tongue. Please. Just stay. Or if that's not possible, then take me with you. I'll help you in any way I can. I won't break my promise. Sasuke remained silent. Her frustrated cries continued. Please. I need to know that you won't become Orochimaru's pawn. I'll help you with your revenge, so just. The silence of the place frightened Sakura. The moon dipped in and out of passing clouds, blinking light down on them. The tears were slowing, but she knew there was nothing else she had to give by way of words. If there was anything more she had to offer, she'd soon be defeated. My goals in this life are to kill Itachi for what he's done and to restore my clan. Neither is easy to do. Finally he turned back to look at her. Should I succeed in destroying Itachi? I want you to marry me and help me rebuild my clan, Sakura. The pink-haired girl was stunned by what he had said. She figured that his request was also an invitation for her to come along, but she wasn't certain. Suddenly her mind was thrown back into very simple methods of communication. No intelligent phrases came to her lips, so she waited until something coherent surfaced. Do you accept? The offer had much pending, she knew, but by passing it up, Sakura knew that would be a betrayal of his trust. There was no other girl in his life, she realized. He was still dependent on her even if he wouldn't admit it. There was a word on her tongue, so she decided to use it. Yes. It was quiet again. Sasuke stood there waiting, his face calm, but she could see the faintest trace of relief in his eyes. Sakura hoped that would be enough to hold them together. She knew what was happening was wrong, but fighting against it was futile. Her feet started moving and she came to stand beside him, wordless and overwhelmed. So this was the toll she had to pay. If she was going to stop him from making catastrophic choices, she would have to trade him her future. Sakura had not truly been ready to do it. Once Sasuke started walking again, she made sure to follow. She had no idea where they were going or how they would survive. The following morning, Naruto's frantic cries woke Gaara up. The red-haired boy tossed his blanket aside and rolled out of bed sleepily. He stepped outside of his bedroom to see what had the blonde boy in such a tizzy. Naruto ignored the fact that Gaara was shirtless. Once again, he's not back yet. Nanometer, what? Haku-kun. Remember last night we got home and he didn't show, and you said he'd probably be turning in late or something. Naruto reminded him, well, he never got back. I checked his room and everything. There's no reason for him not to come home, something's wrong. Gaara stared at him for a long moment. Suddenly Naruto's panic was beginning to rub off on him. Not because he had made such a fuss, but because something was genuinely out of place. Haku had assured them he'd be back before midnight, and now, at 7 in the morning, there was still no sign of him. If there's trouble, then we'll have to tell Tsunade-sama first before we go look for him. The red-haired boy began to dress quickly. Bring some weapons with you. I think we'll need them. At the Hokage's office they were surprised to find that Tsunade was also up quite early, for her, at least, and had her office bustling with ninja coming and going, all awaiting orders. Naruto was certain by the expression on her face that something was already very wrong, and it had nothing to do with Haku. Can I help you boys? She didn't try to hide the bottle of sake on her desk. Her nerves were shot. Haku's gone. Naruto replied quickly, he didn't come home last night. She sighed, rubbing her throbbing temples. I was afraid of this after I'd looked over the reports. Noting their confused faces, she decided to elaborate. I think you two would like to know that I've received intelligence that Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sakura have also disappeared, and have been filed as Nukenin. Naruto's mouth hung open in shock in response to the news. Since these cases are related, I suppose it'd suffice to say that Haku has also fled from Konoha, as they have, Tsunade concluded darkly. Orochimaru is responsible for this, and that being the case, I've sent as many teams out to search as possible, but right now Konoha's short on manpower, so it's unfortunate that something like this had to happen now. Naruto wasn't listening to her, though. He was watching Gaara walk back to the office door. silent as a ghost, knowing that the mere mentioning of Sakura in danger was enough to mobilize him. Wait, Gaara. You can't just. Naruto watched Gaara's sand obscure him from view and then disappear, much to his disgruntlement. Naruto was about to give chase to his rash friend before Tsunade called to him, "Hold it right there, Naruto. I can't afford to lose any more shinobi at the moment. But if he goes out there on his own then he might. Let him go for now. I think he'd be more helpful searching on his own anyway. The Godime overrode him, for now I need you here. You're close to Sakura and Haku so I need you to tell me what you can about." It doesn't make any sense. Naruto answered immediately, "I don't see how they'd leave like this. It isn't something they'd do. Maybe they were forced to, or something. I don't know." Tsunade narrowed her eyes, as the case may be the odds are stacked against them. There was no evidence of a struggle that was discovered, Naruto. They left of their own free will. The blonde boy shut his eyes until the door opened again and Shikamaru entered. The Chunin vest he wore had greatly changed his appearance. "You sent for me, Hokage-sama." Tsunade briefed him on the situation as she had with Naruto, all the while the QB container remained quiet, trying to calm himself down. This sort of mission should only be handled by Chunin and Junin, Shikamaru pointed out. "I know. This is not something I'd normally ask and I'm sorry to say there are no more available ninja at this time I can send on this mission. I want you to collect as many shinobi as you can in 30 minutes and organize a search for Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura and Haku, understood, Shikamaru." Tsunade wrapped up the mission briefing. "I know it's a lot to ask of a freshly promoted Chunin but I was out of options." Shikamaru's face offered little by way of expression but he took the task appointed to him very seriously. "Understood, Tsunade-sama. After I've picked my team we can leave immediately." "Yes, and try to be quick about it, since you have your first team member standing right beside you." Tsunade answered and Shikamaru glanced over to Naruto, surprised that he had remained silent the entire time. "Dismissed. You want Chuji to come with us?" Naruto inquired as they walked down the street, near the Akamaki's residence. "Are you sure that's a good idea if Ino isn't around for you too?" "Of course. Besides, he's more reliable than Gaara, I'd say," Shikamaru replied and the blonde boy scowled. "Maybe if he had waited up he'd be helping us out, huh?" He was worried, Naruto said feebly but knew that the Nara had a point. He watched curiously as Shikamaru opened a bag of chips and began munching, not going any nearer to the house. He offered Naruto to help himself so he didn't bother to argue, though he did ask, "Aren't you going to see if Chuji's home?" "I am. He'll come out." Rather abruptly Chuji had rushed up to them, Naruto had never seen him move so fast, and snatched the chip from Shikamaru's hand, claiming it for himself. After a moment's pause the Nara finished his sentence, "When he sees this is the last one." Naruto wore a baffled look and Chuji shrugged, "The last chip is always the best." He left it at that and followed Shikamaru and Naruto as they walked. Shikamaru briefed Chuji on the details of the mission and he immediately agreed to join, most especially since Shikamaru was the one leading the team. After a short walk down the next street over, Kiba seemed to meet them head-on, looking frantic. Akamaru whimpered from his place nestled in the Inuzuka's coat. Kiba stopped in front of Shikamaru, anxiety clearly visible on his face. "Tsunade-sama told me already. I'm definitely going." Suddenly Naruto understood Kiba's plight. Man. He must be having a bad day right now. His team just up and left him. Sasuke and Sakura, I can't imagine what Kiba's feeling. "Well, sort of, but I know Haku-kun would never abandon us. He isn't like that." Naruto kept his thoughts to himself, understanding that now Kiba didn't want anyone's sympathy, he wanted to retrieve his teammates before tragedy struck. Kiba was also helpful to Shikamaru in that he knew who was and wasn't available. Shino is on a mission with his dad and Sato may have taken a mission to secure the borders of the village, so he could be anywhere. "We don't have time to waste." Shikamaru would have liked to have had Shino or Sato's tracking skills on hand to support Kiba, but they couldn't afford to go look for them. How about Guy's team? Their search brought them to the Hyuga compound where they were lucky enough to spot Neji. They neared the porch he was resting on with his cousin and Shikamaru again described the mission they were entrusted with. "I will do what I can." Neji agreed, standing and giving a long look to Naruto, sensing his immense worry over Haku. "And Lee and Tenten, where are they?" Shikamaru was not pleased to hear that they were still due to return from a mission in Tanzaku Quarter. only another delay? Fine then, this team will do. I wish to go as well. Hinata stood up and raised her voice, determined to help them in their endeavor. This is a no-girls sort of mission, Hinata. Then how come you wanted Tenten to come along, Shikamaru? Chuji asked in a whisper. Skills like hers hardly make her a girl. She practically is a boy, the way she fights. Shikamaru was silenced by a very aggravated glare from Neji, and he admitted that he wasn't being completely fair to Hinata. Hinata-chan should come with us. Naruto protested against Shikamaru's hesitation. She can help track them down just as well as Neji can, and her shadow clones will definitely help. Neji, unexpectedly so, agreed. Naruto is right. It would be foolish to leave Hinata-sama behind when we are seeking 3 fugitives. The more people on the team the better. Hinata looked to her cousin gratefully and then turned her gaze to Shikamaru, who was scrutinizing her as if he was having an internal argument. After a long moment he sighed, knowing he was outnumbered on the matter. Fine. She comes. But women can be so troublesome, sometimes. You're going to have to wait here for me. Sasuke's voice was low as he gave instructions to Sakura in the treetop they had settled in. There are only 3 of them, but it'll take some convincing to get him to allow you along. Sasuke-kun, are you sure about this? Her eyes were wide with fear. Sakura was quickly beginning to realize how her presence was complicating the situation. Even so, the Uchiha was adamant in keeping her, even at the risk of angering the Oto ninja who had invited him to sound. He brushed his lips against her ear, murmuring, just keep quiet and stay here. They aren't far off, so I won't be long. The touch made her shudder. All right. Sasuke moved ahead without her and Sakura remained where she was, staring off into the thick of the echoing forest. After finally coming upon the waiting sound shinobi on the forest floor, some quarter-mile north of where he had left Sakura, he discovered something rather disconcerting. What is this? Saken smirked at the slumped-over form of Haku who was being rebound in webbing by Kidomaru. Orochimaru-sama has also been keeping track of this boy as well, but he chose to be difficult. He shouldn't be here. Sasuke growled warningly, not pleased they had taken Haku by force. Haku had never been particularly close to him, but Sasuke had never held a quarrel with the boy. His nature was far too docile even for a ninja. Something made him want to demand they return Haku to Konoha immediately. Not because he wanted to deprive Orochimaru of a secondary prize, but because the absence of Haku in the Leaf Village meant his number 1 confidants would be hot on his trail. If Naruto and Gaara come looking for him, it'll lead him straight to me. After a moment's silence, Sasuke decided to throw caution to the wind and let things resume. It may be good to have one of Sakura's good friends along for the journey even if it was against his will. Haku may be able to keep her company in the event he could not. This should do for now. Kidomaru dropped Haku's limp form carelessly back down to the ground. Little runt. I could have sworn he tried to kick me on the way here. A fish out of water will always try to flap around. Tayuya commented blandly, a stupid S like you should be more cautious. They turned their attention to Sasuke after dealing with Haku and Saken spoke again. We're sorry for our rudeness during our first meeting, Sasuke-sama. As of now we've decided that you will be our leader. Although Sasuke didn't quite care what they thought of him, this news was actually welcome. With them viewing him as a superior, it would give him the proper footing to order that Sakura accompany them, but he stayed silent when Saken had more to say. Also, there is an important message from Orochimaru. Saken added, restraining a chuckle, I've been asked to tell you that you must S once. S once. Sasuke found the message absurd. Enhancement pills, you will need to take these. Saken held a small bottle up to him containing many small dark pills. What do they do, exactly? Your curse seal is at level 1, Tayuya informed him from her place to his left. The pill will forcibly increase your seal to level 2. Sasuke looked back to Saken, his eyes distrustful as the Oto Nin continued, but at level 2 the speed at which the seal invades your body will rapidly increase. In that case you would S immediately. The wind M through the trees looming overhead. In order to control stage 2 your body must get accustomed to it over a period of time. If you do that you will be, Saken paused for a second, you will probably be able to gain the same level of power as us. But after the change it will only be a short time until US. What is the point of this if it came me? Sasuke appeared outwardly calm, but his insides were twisting angrily at the thought of meeting his end before he could kill Itachi. There is no need to worry, that is why we are here, Saken assured him, walking up to him. With our shield techniques we will block the side effects. Instead of you will receive the power and be placed in a temporary coma. Can I trust your so-called shield techniques? Yes, Sasuke-sama, Kidomaru spoke up. We are Orochimaru-sama's elite guard. Shields, defense ninjutsu and seal ninjutsu are our forte. Still, he wasn't about to take their word for it. No matter what happens I can't yet. Saken tilted his head, smirking. If you're nervous, how about we try it out on Haku first? Sasuke looked over to Tayuya as she dragged the unconscious boy over to Saken. Sasuke wondered why they were so rough with Haku while they treated him like a glass ornament. Saken force-fed a pill to the dark-haired boy and stood back, handing the bottle off to Sasuke. You next, Sasuke-sama. The Uchiha watched as Haku struggled for a few moments, his body rejecting the pill's harmful effects. He went limp a minute later and Sasuke looked down at the pill he held in his hand, thinking it over. If I'm in a coma then there's no way I can protect Sakura from these three if they choose to give her a hard time. He had considered mentioning her before taking the pill, but decided against it. She'll have to stay behind. I won't risk her getting hurt. I shouldn't have gotten her involved. Sasuke also swallowed a pill and at first felt nothing. After a minute he began to succumb to an excruciating sensation that stung every nerve ending he had. He began thrashing. His body was unresponsive. Kidomaru waited patiently for the Uchiha to pass out and caught him before he hit the ground. How about now, Saken? Saken had already summoned a large barrel from a scroll in which Tayuya had placed Haku. There was room enough for the both of them and Kidomaru placed Sasuke's unconscious form in as well and then stepped back to help with the sealing. Though there were only 3 of them remaining they were still able to effectively seal the barrel, though it cost a great amount of chakra to do it without Jirobo, Shikakumujin. Saken quickly wrote seals out on several tags before tossing them at the barrel, Fukoku Huan. After the hurried sealing was completed the 3 Oto ninja sighed in relief. Now the difficult task of guarding the 2-leaf nin was their primary concern. Saken also suspected that Haku may cause a problem when he awoke with his new level 2 seal, so it was imperative to keep strict tabs on the boy, while Sasuke was less of a problem since he had come willingly. Kidomaru hauled the barrel onto his back and followed silently after Saken and Tayuya. A formation. Naruto found Shikamaru's plan confusing. We don't have time for that kind of crap. We need to get going now. If we chase after them all jumbled and disorganized we leave ourselves open to an ambush or a possible trap, Shikamaru retorted, his brow furrowing. That's the plan. Now listen because I'm only going to explain this once. Naruto quieted down and settled beside Hinata, folding his arms irritably. If something happens to Haku-kun or Sakura-chan because we stalled I'm gonna be pissed. Gaara-kun better find them and slow them down or we'll be in the fryer. For now we're on the offense, which means it would be easy for the enemy to make the first move, Shikamaru began. That's why, in order to protect from their random attacks, I will be deciding on a formation for us to move in. Should anyone ignore me and act on their own everyone could Kiba gulped audibly. The formation will be a line. The Forerunner, who has the most important and crucial task, will be Kiba, the Nara went on, locking eyes with the latter. Every year you travel with a Kamaru and you know the geography of the fire country. Your nose works pretty well so you'll be able to track Sasuke and Haku, and also detect certain B-traps the enemy leaves behind. The Inuzuka boy nodded in understanding, patting a Kamaru's head. Shikamaru continued, drawing the formation out on a scroll, and second will be me, the leader. Since I'll be able to see the situation I'll be able to give out orders in front to Kiba. To the rear members I can give orders by hand signals. He then turned to Hinata. Third, behind me, will be you Hinata. She returned his expectant gaze dutifully. With your eyes you'll be able to scout a bit ahead to warn us of potential danger or changes. Because you'll be gathering critical information like that you need to be near me in case I have to make up a strategy, though it may leave you the most open to attack, so that's why Naruto will be right behind you in line. The blonde boy nodded to her quietly, giving her a reassuring smile as Shikamaru added, if Naruto is with you at the line's center his shadow clones combined with yours can give aid in all directions. He'll be the center of help, the gut of the line. The Hyuga girl nodded, seeing the logic in such placement. The fifth will be Chuji. Shikamaru looked to his best friend. You don't have speed, but you have the most physical power because of your size. Although it may be awkward, all of us in front of you will be using you as a base, as in home base. While the others act, you and I can still use our combination techniques during a distraction. Neji's eyes were closed as he listened. Finally you, Neji. I will ask you to do the most difficult and complicated task. Your Byakugan, like Hinata's, will help scan and check the area. That way, the enemy can't get an attack in on us from behind, where we're most vulnerable. The Hyuga prodigy nodded in agreement after hearing the explanation. And I want to check the weapons that you guys brought with you. Please let me see what each of you have and I will remember it. Shikamaru concluded, rolling up the scroll he had doodled on. Does anyone have any questions? Naruto shook his head when no one made the effort to speak up. Finally, this is the most important thing I have to say, the Chunin added. I'm not personally close with Sasuke, Haku or Sakura, however, they are shinobi of Konoha, our comrades. That's why we must risk our lives to save them. It is our duty as shinobi of the Leaf Village. Even though I don't like doing troublesome things, I am responsible for your lives. Kiba snickered. Hey, now you're starting to sound like a real Chunin. Chuji only smiled at his friend, having known all his life that even if Shikamaru often lacked conviction, he was a true and noble leader. Once Neji-Nisan and I check your equipment, we can go. Hinata said softly, feeling the pressure mount now that she was the only female of the group. She and her elder cousin examined the team's entire collection of weaponry side by side, and she had nearly asked him if he was sure Tenten and Lee weren't available. By the look on Neji's face, Hinata could see that now more than ever he wanted his most trusted teammates beside him. At a time when he has begun to grow so close and fond of them, he must undertake a mission without them. She understood that feeling. Shino and Sato were abroad at the moment. But as she considered it, she realized that everyone present had probably not seen the teammates for a while. Shikamaru, Kiba and Naruto-kun have also been alone for a while. It must be so hard. Once everyone had stored their weapons away, the team began to move out through the front gate of Konoha. There was a chilling moment as the sun shone down brightly on the 6 brave shinobi that fell into line easily and then disappeared into the surrounding forest together. He had been gone for nearly a quarter of an hour and it had her anxiously pacing the treetops like a caged lioness, calling his name every so often. He's going to be back soon. Sakura assured herself, her thoughts muddled. Sasuke will make sure it's safe before we keep going together. When he had left, he looked afraid. She remembered the expression on his face very well, and she couldn't understand entirely why he had thought it was perfectly fine to leave her alone in a forest that most likely contained foreign ninja expectant of his arrival but not hers. Will they try to kill me if they find me? Would they even let me go with him? Upon her flight from Konoha alongside her teammate, she had never considered the fact that she may be picked off like a worthless scab. Sakura had overlooked the detail in which they only wanted Sasuke when all was said and done, and not some headstrong Kunoichi who was merely a genin and bound to complicate things. She was entirely and undeniably alone in that moment for the first time in her life. The silence of the woods made the hair on her arms stand on end in terror. She leaned uneasily on the trunk of the cedar tree she was perched in. She deliberated what would happen if the sound ninja discovered her before Sasuke returned. Would she fight? Would she flee? I'm not going back home, not unless Sasuke comes with me. She thought, though it was something she honestly doubted. He wouldn't be so willing to give up after he had so brazenly left the village without batting an eyelash. In a way, she had known he had abandoned her. The only reason he would leave her behind would be to do just that. Even if it had not been his first intention, she was still aware of the reality of the situation. Though Sakura was loath to admit it, she was indeed a big distraction. And even worse, he hadn't planned a particularly helpful way to leave her either. Did he just expect me to run back to Konoha without him if things went badly? Does he have that much confidence in me to think I'd get home alive? She had come so far and now it held no meaning. Sasuke, please, don't do this to me. Don't bring me with you and ask me to marry you and then leave me behind. Her voice was hoarse against the crescendo of singing crickets. This isn't going to solve anything. I know I'm an idiot for coming out here, but that makes you an idiot too. How can I move on not knowing if you're even alive? Her pink hair was glued to her face with sweat. It was uncomfortable and only added to her discontent. I won't go. I'll wait. He may just be lost. He'll be back. She could suddenly sense a faint presence nearby, approaching quickly. Is that a sound shinobi? Sakura drew a kunai and crouched down on the branch she was balanced on, fairly certain that the individual nearing with such stealth and quiet intended to investigate and not ambush. Not Sasuke. The immediate appearance of the newcomer surprised her and she pounced instantaneously, bringing her knife down in a sweeping motion which the newcomer easily blocked and then knocked the kunai aside. Sakura waited for the violent counterstrike but it never came. It was not Sasuke. Sakura, you can't stay here. Gaara's arm was around her waist as her knees weakened in fright at the sight of him. How long have you been here? The pink-haired girl could give no immediate response. What the hell was he doing here anyway? How could he have known? Or better still, how could he have not known? Not long, her voice cracked with the weight of her emotions. Sakura closed her eyes, desperately trying to get a grip. Gaara saw her distress. It was written all over her heartbroken face. He knew its source. Liar. She wriggled away and settled against a perpendicular branch, clinging to it to support her weight which felt like it had suddenly doubled. The last thing she would do was lean on Gaara and make him feel like he was right, like she needed his help. You shouldn't have followed us, Gaara, Sakura said flatly, the words stinging her tongue. I'm leaving with Sasuke. He needs me. If he needs you so badly, why isn't he here? The anger in his eyes made them look like sharp, green fire. Maybe if Sasuke were present he wouldn't be half as angry as he was. That she was alone. Maybe. He needed to make sure it was safe. He's just as much a liar as you are. Gaara turned from her. He was mad at her too. A pair of liars. That's what I've been chasing. Sakura shook her head helplessly in denial. He has endangered your life by bringing you here. There is no way he can fully ensure your safety. Gaara looked back to her, questioningly. How long has he left you alone here? Sasuke's coming back. He's not coming back, Sakura. His voice was rough. He had the good sense to continue on without you, at least. No. Sakura threw a flailing punch at him, tears beginning to blind her. He'll be here. Sasuke. She called for him, futilely. It only angered him more as he caught her half-hearted punches. He hated the affection reserved in her voice when she spoke the Uchiha's name. Sasuke has used you as a crutch for his misery, even if he hasn't realized that. Gaara's eyes softened on her as she backed away, choking back hysterical sobs. He has seen a future for himself with you in it, a future he is too cowardly to work for. He has chosen the easiest path to achieve his goal, to achieve power. I would never elect such a thing. I will never leave you. He reached for her and she backed away from his hand, like it too would betray her. So what if Sasuke-kun went ahead? I'll follow him. I'll find him. He needs me. I promised him I'd never let anything bad happen to him. Her voice lowered. He promised the same for me. Sakura, people bent on power will always break their promises. No. He wants to marry me. He loves me. Why would he throw that away? It isn't about power, Gaara. Sakura said it as if he didn't understand, as if she could convince him he didn't. Finally she backed herself against the tree trunk, unable to escape his persistent hold. His arms felt smooth and strong, and he held her as if she were a crazed pet trying to escape its owner. Her struggling ended and she leaned into him resignedly. What now? What was the use? Gaara had caught her and she had no hope of getting away, that was for certain. His embrace loosened. He was gentle. He said he wasn't going to leave. All the same, she could tell he was still distraught. Her defection from Konoha must have hurt him. Her feelings for Sasuke must have hurt him more, and she knew they would. If it isn't about power, then why has he run to Sound? Can you answer that? Gaara asked quietly, knowing the cold hard truth was difficult for her to hear. The tears streamed steadily down Sakura's cheeks. He was right, she knew he was, but that didn't stop the pain and it didn't solve the problem. She had come all this way praying for things to end well. This is what she ended up with. If he wanted to marry you, he would have stayed. He would have given you everything and cast his bitterness away for you. He would protect your dreams and keep you safe. Most importantly, he put you before himself. Gaara explained, unmitigated, it was a coward's love he gave you, which is far less than what you deserve. What was he preaching about this time? What was the point? He always gave her these long talks that made her feel like a fool in the end. Sakura, he doesn't love you as I do. I ask nothing of you. I could never demand anything from you, not even on the day I arrived in this village. You had already given me so much when you chose to be my friend. His voice was softer. Sakura raised her eyes to his. I've known it was not worth standing between the two of you, but I've waited. He admitted, you are the only person I have ever felt this way about. If I would make one demand after all of this time, then it's this, I want you to live and that is all. He lowered his mouth to hers, so just live. There was sincerity in his actions, but the last thing she had expected him to do while he was angry with her was to kill her. It was slow and cautious but unwavering, and Sakura let her eyes blink closed, unwilling to fight against the new contact. Gaara, do you really? It was as if her brain had switched off, much as it had when Sasuke had proposed, however in this instance nothing about it felt wrong at all. Gaara had surprised her. Again. Maybe that was why she had been so taken with him while growing up and at the academy, even during the Tanabata festival. But he had never shown interest, not in any way she could perceive, at least. So she had pushed her hopes for their friendship becoming something more to the wayside and focused on becoming a stronger Kunoichi. A fat lot of good that had done her. She had scarcely improved and now all the old emotions were bubbling to the surface with great intensity, screaming at her in frustration. Why had she placed Sasuke over Gaara? Sakura had always understood that she had Gaara's unconditional affection. She just decided not to act on it because there was no guarantee his mind wouldn't change about her. Now she had to accept her error. Sasuke was the one who fled, not Gaara. He'd run after her and professed his feelings. It was surreal. Like some sort of tacky fairy tale where everything straightens out after overcoming the obstacles. Still, Sakura knew there wasn't a snowball's chance in hell of this fiasco having a happy ending, even with Gaara around. We're still in danger here but, he came to save me. Sakura's thoughts drifted like mist through her head while she reciprocated. She remembered now. She remembered why Gaara and all that he represented had meant so much to her. He had suffered and overcome. He had been alone but chosen friendship. She remembered why she had chosen him. He wouldn't let her down. You are so irrational, and selfish. Gaara started speaking the words against her mouth. You're foolish and naive. You'd get yourself killed if I wasn't around. Sakura killed him again, placating, trying to shut him up. She wished that he didn't have to remind her of her faults, even if it was his job to do so. Every time, you were smarter than me, braver, what happened to you? He still tried to speak, innocently curious. I am like you, a fool, selfish. I want to ask for you one day. You are all that is good in me. Sakura felt tears sting at her eyes again. Why did he have to say such things? It was in his nature to complicate matters. His hand had moved to her tangled, pastel hair. He closed his eyes finally. He was starting to trust the way she made him feel. Sakura understood at last why she couldn't tell Sasuke those same words. She had tried to, but all along the only person she could tell them to and mean it was to Gaara. I love, she tried to speak in the midst of their tousling but it was of no use. It was harder than it looked, and she silently commended him for his ability to multitask, and speaking. The red-haired nin pulled away from her. It was a very reluctant action and her eyes fluttered open to stare at him in wonder. Wow, Naruto and Haku were never going to believe this. Sakura was unsure if they even had to know. Just live, he mumbled, his nose pressed against her cheek contentedly. She relaxed completely. Sakura had not felt this safe since before the Chunin exam. It had been a while and so she welcomed the feeling back. Sakura. Yes, she responded, her chin resting on his shoulder lazily. Sasuke could wait. If she knew well enough, which she did, Gaara wasn't the only leaf ninja out chasing fugitives. She had faith. I'm sorry, Sakura-chan. His words were frank and it frightened her. Sorry about what? You'll be asleep for a while. You're going to wake up in your home. I'm going to. His elbow landed in her gut and the air left her lungs instantly. She was unconscious before she even realized what was about to happen. It was for her own good, Gaara reasoned. If Sasuke turned up again no doubt she'd rashly chase after him so it was better to be sure. Now she was not going anywhere on her own. Gaara pulled her weight over his shoulder, preparing his nerves for the journey back to Konohagakure. Sleep well, Sakura. He took off, not caring what fate held in store for Sasuke. He had someone precious in need of protecting, and there was no one and nothing that would be able to stop him. Shizune turned to teammate Awashi, a worried look gracing her face. Genma and Rado are late, we should go check on them. He nodded to her, having thought of it himself. Let's go. The two Junin left the cover of the glade they had been taking shelter in and moved west, as the missing half of their team had earlier. They had been gone too long after they had went ahead to confront the nearby sound ninja. Something was wrong. Awashi spotted them first. Shizune, over there. They descended upon a monstrous scene, kunai and shuriken dotting the surrounding ground and trees, and B pulling beside Rado and on the front of Genma's vest as he sat propped up against a tree. Rado. Genma. Shizune rushed to them, frantic. She didn't understand. Her team was entirely comprised of Junin, taking on only 3 Otonin. It should have been no contest. How could this have happened? She asked softly, immediately tending to Genma's wounds while Awashi saw to Rado close by. There's no way it should have ended like this. Should I go after them? Awashi inquired, not wanting to decide too late if they were still in the vicinity. Genma turned to him, his expression grim. Don't. The power they displayed, it definitely has something to do with Orochimaru. We didn't have a chance. Shizune kept her thoughts private, but then, the team of genin that Tsunade-sama sent out to retrieve Haku and Sasuke, they will have to contend with this. Shikamaru. The air is thick with the scent of bee here. Kiba reported, halting, and the rest of the line behind him quickly did the same. Observing with her Byakugan, Hinata confirmed it. He's right, it appears there was a battle several yards east of here. There are some wounded Leaf Junin regrouping. Kiba watched the Chunin steadily. What do you want us to do? Shikamaru was silent for a long moment as he thought it over. If there was a battle, they may be able to give us some information. But we can't waste any more time. While we sit around here and chat, who knows what they're doing to Sasuke and Haku-kun. Naruto protested, still terrified of what was to become of his dear friends. Shikamaru gave him an annoyed look. If they battled Sound Ninja and they were Junin, and they were defeated, Naruto understood his reasoning. This is going to be a very troublesome time for us, Naruto. Shikamaru, we do have a larger team. Naruto is right. If we don't do something, Sasuke and Haku might be in trouble. Chuji was in agreement that, despite the peril, action had to be taken. Shikamaru would always acknowledge his best friend's words. Fine. It'd be best to keep moving. It's just as likely those Leaf Ninja can't tell us what happened to them. Everyone stay on your guard. Keep moving, Kiba. Hinata. Kiba and Hinata darted ahead and Shikamaru followed, hoping he didn't just pass up an opportunity to gather consequential information. Gaara-kun, I sure hope you found them, Naruto thought to himself as he moved ahead, and if Haku-kun really did decide to run away, then he'll have me to answer to. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.